If Marianne Williamson wasn't on your radar before this week, I imagine she is today. She's trending on Twitter after the Democratic Party debate, and for good reason. Marianne Williamson is an original, smart, provocative, unusual, always fascinating. Today on the Casser-Jayne Show, I'm bringing you an interview with Miss Williamson that goes back to January 2014. It was the first time Marianne was a guest on my show, one of many conversations the presidential candidate and spiritual leader and I have had over many years. I chose this particular interview because it showcases who Marianne Williamson is as a person. It tells the story of her personal journey, and although many want to treat her as out there, I think you'll discover Marianne's personal journey is not at all that different from yours and mine. For those who don't know anything about Marianne Williamson, she is the internationally acclaimed spiritual leader, lecturer, and the author of many published books, many which have been New York Times bestsellers, 4 of them reaching the coveted #1 spot, including her breakout hit, A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course in Miracles. Marianne Williamson has been a popular guest on television shows including Oprah, Larry King Live, Good Morning America, and Charlie Rose. In December 2006, a NEWSWEEK magazine poll named Marianne Williamson one of the 50 most influential baby boomers. This interview was recorded New Year's Eve 2014, Marianne appearing to hawk her book, A Year of Miracles, Daily Devotions, and Reflections, and to talk about her first foray into politics, her run for election to the U.S. House of Representatives from California's Congressional District 33, a race she later lost. It's presented without editing. Enjoy. How are you, Marianne?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, I have to tell you, if you're going to author books like your newest, A Year of Miracles, Daily Devotions, and Reflections that offer guidance and spiritual support for following the path to love, and bill yourself as a world-renowned teacher who has taught millions around the world an incredible secret, you can transform your life in the world by simply changing how you think. You better have earned your billing, and lady, you certainly have. So let's start with those stripes you've earned. And beginning at the beginning, born and raised in Texas to Jewish parents, share with us a little of your upbringing. Tell us about your parents, your family, early life. Let's have it.
I had a wonderful family. I had wonderful parents, and I have a pretty large family and of really good people. You don't even know at the time of childhood just how lucky you are or how unlucky you are in some cases till later when you can have perspective. And I just grew up among beautiful people, wonderful, just a wonderful upbringing. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't, everything was perfect every moment, but the older I get, the more admiration I have for my own parents. So
that's pretty good beginning.
Yeah.
That's great. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to either be a lawyer or an actress. I remember. I wanted to be a lawyer or an actress, so I didn't become either one, but,
Yeah, well, we all have our dreams.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this. I read somewhere that you told your parents that you talked to God. Is that true? Or is that...
My parents that I talked to God?
I read all this stuff, and that was one of the things that you told your parents that you talked.
I was very religious as a child. I had this whole routine about saying my prayers at night, and I was very specific about. I remember there was the Lord's Prayer, and then there was the Shema. I'm Jewish, and there's the Shema that you say a particular Jewish prayer. And then I would have this little, the particular things I would pray for. But I didn't tell my mother I talked to God or anything like that. She would have said, well, that's fine. Now clean up your room.
Yeah, really, I hear that. Don't you love the stuff that gets out on you on the Internet and stuff these days?
Well,
it's just fascinating, right?
Everything you read.
Notice how I asked that as a question. It didn't quite go in with what I know about Marianne Williamson. I have to tell you, you attended Mona College.
Yes.
It's so interesting because when I look at your whole life, there's some things there from the beginning that explain some of the stuff at the end. What did you major in college?
Philosophy. I think philosophy and drama. And I left there in my junior year. But that was my study, was philosophy and drama, which is interesting because in a way I've kind of lived my major. It has been, I'm a kind of performing philosopher or something. I get up on stage.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Sounds like you took the best and left the worst behind. So I'm looking at all of this stuff that goes on, and there are all sorts of these stories. Who knows what's true? We'll find out from you as we go along here. But am I wrong in thinking that you were a restless soul, that you were searching for something meaningful in life pretty early on?
Who's not?
I know some who unfortunately aren't. But
I don't know. I think the 20s are hard. I think for every generation. And mine was, I grew up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and those years of restless searching, but no more or less than anyone else I've ever known. I've always felt about my life and about everything I talk about. I always feel that I'm not saying anything everybody I know isn't saying. I'm just saying it into the microphone. And I don't think that I've had experiences in life growing up that weren't pretty much the same garden variety as everybody was having. I think growing up is hard.
Growing is very hard. But it was really pretty fascinating for people like you and I who grew up in the 60s, I think. So much came at us, right?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary time, and I think that if you were part of that, you were kind of marked by it. I think the time we're living in right now harkens back to it in terms of kind of countercultural trend and possibility and a real openness to doing things a new way. It reminds me of a former time. And we need it, by the way. We needed it then, and we need it now.
I so agree with you. It's 1973. You moved to New York to pursue a career, first as a cabaret singer. Boy, I'd love to hear that voice of yours. And you spent a couple of years. Now, this is another one of those that there's a lot of stuff out there, so I'm going to let you clarify it. Your relationship with Albert Goldman, the rock biographer. Was that a romantic relationship besides a business?
No.
See, that's out there, too.
Pardon?
That is out there, too, that it was a romantic relationship.
No, it was not a romantic relationship, but I was his editorial assistant. He was very much older. I was in my early 20s, and he was a much older man. I think he was in his 60s, I think, at the time. I'm not sure. Anyway, I was his editorial assistant, and I learned a lot. He was a brilliant man, and, he was something. He was very brilliant, and just being around his thinking, and because I had I did for him something which now as a writer I understand. I would go there in the morning, and the way he wrote, which I totally understand, is he would talk. And that's how he wrote. And he was a brilliant writer, brilliant. But he would talk. So he would use me as an audience every morning. And then my job was to type up the transcription of what he has written. So I really was the beneficiary of just listening to a brilliant mind every day. That's what I did for work. I would listen to him and then type it up and be the, secretary there.
Talk to me about the cabaret singer. What were you singing? What kind of song?
A lot of American standards, Cole Porter, George Gershwin, things like that. I still sing them in the shower. In the shower.
You have the most gorgeous speaking voice, and I can imagine what you sing like. You really ought to do that for someone.
Thank you.
I ultimately realized
I ultimately realized I was a better talker than singer, but so I leave the singing to those who had. I was okay, but there are those who are great, and you should leave a field to those who are great at it, I think.
I love the fact that you were a singer. I just think that's great. The other thing is this: you then had I think you got involved in a relationship that didn't work out, so you went through a pretty rough time emotionally after that. That's a part of the lexicon that's out there. Also true? That kind of catapulted you to speak? I don't know. Don't we all?
Like everybody that I know, I've been through relationships that did not work out. So at that time in my 20s, yes, I think it's true that I went through a relationship or two that did not work out, yes.
But I'm bringing it up for this
once
reason.
Again, no more or less than anybody else.
No, I understand that. But the reason I'm bringing it up, actually, is because you did start to move towards that spiritual, awakening of yours, and that spiritual movement.
Absolutely.
And these are things that catapulted you towards them. A lot of people don't go the same route that you went. I mean, some people it takes a little longer. They may get there. Some people it happens and they become totally self-destructive, and that's the end of it. Not Marianne. Marianne went and she found something to focus on, and she said, I want to change my life. And I think that says a lot about who you are, and you stuck to it, which is why I bring it up. So I'm not harping on the salacious.
No, I know. I was in my mid-20s, actually, when I first saw The Course in Miracles. And that set of books made a tremendous difference for me. Because, it's like you had asked about my major in college, and I'd studied philosophy. I had studied a lot of books that explained things to me intellectually, but I didn't know how to apply them. And with A Course in Miracles, I learned, it has to do with how you think of and treat every person in every moment. And if you have an open heart, you will have one experience of life. And if you have a closed heart, you will have another experience of life. It sounds very simple, and it is simple, but it's also revolutionary if you apply it.
Tell people, just give them an overview of what the Course in Miracles is. We assume everybody knows.
A Course in Miracles is a set of books that has been described as a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy. It is a training, it is a psychological training in relinquishing the thoughts of fear and accepting instead thoughts of love. It's really just a course in forgiveness. That's all it is, really. And the goal of the course is the attainment of inner peace. But it changes everything.
It does change everything. I have to tell you something funny. I still have my card that I walked around with when I took it way back when.
Wow.
Like 1978 with my 3, They told me to write, and I still have that card. And you know what? Everything came through, but in odd ways.
Right.
But,
exactly.
if you look back, it comes through. It's interesting what the power sends you. Living with fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, which is something I think we all do as in our early 20s. I think that's what it is, learning to overcome that living with fear, anxiety, shame, and guilt. But you did it, and you credit the Course in Miracles as having been what catapulted you toward overcoming those emotions that we...
the Course in Miracles does not claim a monopoly on truth. It's not the only book that speaks, higher truth. I think there's one truth spoken in many different ways, many different religious and spiritual systems and philosophies. It's just the one that so spoke to me in terms of my ability to practice something. And the idea here is that there are only 2 categories of emotion, love and fear, and that all negative emotions, such as the ones you mentioned, are derived from fear. And fear is simply the absence of love. That light is to darkness what love is to fear. That in the presence of one, the other cannot be. But in the absence of one, the other will inevitably be. So once you see shame, guilt, anxiety, all those things you mentioned, as simply a product of lovelessness, then you seek to become disciplined with love. And the more you stand in love, the less shame you'll feel. The more you stand in love, the less anxiety you feel. The more you stand in love, the less depressed you'll feel, and on and on.
Here's a thought that always comes to my mind. Maybe it's the law of the universe. Talk to me about this. I mean, why is it we have to go through the negative to get to the positive? What is that? Why are we instilled with this, shame and fear and guilt that we have to overcome to get to the love? Why is it such a hard trip? Why isn't it the other way around, that we get all this love that becomes our natural state?
Because
you ever think about that?
Love is our natural state, but the planet on which we live is dominated by a thought system based on fear. And we start learning that thought system from a very, very early age. So enlightenment or spiritual journey is about unlearning the thinking of the world so that we can accept instead the thinking that is natural to us. Look at little babies. Love is natural. But we are taught on this planet an unnatural thought system. And then the task of our lives is to unlearn that thinking. And it can be difficult because those thoughts are entrenched.
That thinking is what is so prevalent, so prevalent.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Is that evil? What is that?
Well,
why is it that way?
Evil, when it's taken to its most extreme, then yes, evil results. But not every thought of annoyance is going to turn into something evil. Not every thought of anger is going to turn into something evil. Not every thought of upset is going to turn into evil. However, when there's enough upset and there's enough anger, then absolutely evil results.
Yeah,
so,
it's fascinating.
The idea of fear-based thinking is not just a superficial conversation. It is suspicious at best, the ego mind that produces it. The Course in Miracles says it is suspicious at best and vicious at worst. So our seeking to become more loving people and create a more loving world is very serious business for that very reason.
In school, I think that should be the first thing that's taught.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I've always felt that is something that is so lacking in at least in this country and in education. I'm sure all countries, but
why
in our
do we
country.
do spelling and arithmetic, but not kindness?
Exactly. It's the most bizarre thing to me. I mean, it would be really, and it's not a religious thing. It's a spiritual thing, which we're going to talk about in a second, right?
And then if you look at the state of our teenagers, the state of America's children. I mean, we really need to take a good look at ourselves, and we need to take a good look at our society and see where all this loveless path is taking us and has taken us, and choose again. That's really the point of personal transformation, is that you can choose again. And I think that is the point of societal transformation as well. We need to choose again. We need to choose another way.
I absolutely, totally agree with you. I want to go to this. You wind up in L.A. Story tells it that you had $1,000 in your pocket. Who knows if that's true or not? I guess you can tell us.
No, that was true. That was true.
And in 1990, describing yourself as an unwed Jewish mother, you gave birth to your daughter, India Emmeline Emma. I love this. I love this. Because I have to tell you, we share something in common on that one. You don't identify her father, and that's great. That's your choice. But you know what you are? You are a single working parent for all of these years.
Yes, my daughter's 23 now, so she helps me
but
as
you're
much
still
as
a single
I help her at this point.
But you raised her, and you did what so many have to do these days, which is be single, earn a living, and raise your child alone. That's pretty extraordinary. Somebody has to pat you on the back for that one, right? But it's an experience that you had, and I think that makes you even more of somebody who can relate, because that's so much the experience of so many women. I think it's something, the numbers of women raising children single-handedly these days has gone up exponentially to the times. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is what you just said, that many people are doing it, and it's a very common experience. You know, I also don't glorify it. It simply was my experience of life. And I have, I think we all see the absolute beauty in people who love each other and have children and raise their children together. So I'm not failing to honor that as the optimum, But many people find themselves in situations where that's simply not what happened. And I don't judge myself for it. I don't judge anyone else for it. It's simply what some people's experience is. But I don't, glorify it as, hey, girls, that's the way to go. Because I think it's really wonderful when children have two parents who are there. And I think we all recognize that as well.
Absolutely. But I would suspect that it changed some of your thinking in terms of some of what you teach. Made you stronger, made you something, anything? What do you think was the effect of raising a child on your own, on Marianne?
Well, I never thought of myself as raising my child on my own. The fact that I was not in a marriage doesn't mean that I raised her on my own. I think that there's more to family than nuclear family. I think also when women do have, and this is probably true of men as well, who are single parents, I think this creates a kind of emotional permission for a lot of people to move in closer than they would have. So many friends, many family members. My daughter and I were not holed up in a house by ourselves with nobody ever around. So I never thought of myself as really raising my child alone. And
you had the village.
Absolutely, I had the village, right?
Yeah, right, I got that. Let's talk about this wonderful new book, A Year of Miracles, Daily Devotions and Reflections. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of the book, let's talk about miracles. We toss that word around a lot, miracle. Tell me how you define miracle.
I define it as a shift in perception from fear to love. Once you realize that thought is cause and the effects in your life are produced by that cause, then you realize that every thought you think is important. And there are two categories of thought. There's loving thought, and then there's thought where love is absent, and that is where fear sets in. And then fear has many aspects, shame, anxiety, all the things that you were talking about. So shifting your thinking, knowing that any moment you do make a choice. You either make it consciously or unconsciously. But every moment you choose whether or not to have an open heart, which will produce one experience of life, or a closed heart, which will experience another kind of life, then you take that decision very, very seriously. And miracles result from every loving thought. Whenever there is love, the universe is able to organize itself. The universe is able to correct itself where necessary. Where love is present, things just work out. Where love is present, there's harmony. Where love is present, there's peace. Where love is present, people understand each other, listen to each other, care about each other, nurture each other, forgive each other. And when love is not present, people are separate from each other, and there's anger, and there's anxiety, and there's violence. It's common sense if you think about it, but I think we don't think about it enough.
Right, and sometimes the simple things are the things that are really the most potent. If you don't believe in miracles, can miracles happen for you anyway?
Well, embryos are turning into babies, and buds are turning into blossoms, and acorns are turning into oak trees, whether you believe they are or not. And gravity is working whether you believe it works or not. So cause and effect rules the universe, whether regardless of anybody's opinion. And I think that's what a lot of people are realizing about principles of consciousness. Your opinion has very little to do with it. And they're revealed to us not from an attitude of you should believe this, but just with an attitude of just thought you might like to know.
Right. And it is what it is. I mean, it is
what it is. And love will have a particular aspect, a particular kind of influence on your life, whether you believe it will or not. And
right, absolutely.
Whatever. Yeah.
Okay, but here's why this book? Why now? I mean, Marianne, I know you think everything through. You don't, one of those people goes by by your pants. It's a thought. Did you think the world needed this book now? Was it something to do with something we're going to talk about later? Your campaign? Did it have to do with why now? Why this book? And I love this book, by the way. I can't wait to start doing it.
I didn't write this book or any other book because I thought the world needed it. I don't think that way. So I've never tried to get a message out. I'm trying to get a message in. I think a singer sings and a writer writes, a musician plays because that's the song of their soul. So I think that I write every book. Well, yes, and I think I write primarily for myself first. I think, I read somewhere a long time ago, a writer named Arnold Patton said, if you genuinely have something to say, there's someone out there who genuinely needs to hear it. If you need to say it, someone out there needs to hear it. That meant a lot to me. I think the only chance we have of speaking to people in a deep place where they will hear you from a deep place is if you're speaking from your own depth, your own passion. So it's not about what other people need to hear. I think that's kind of grandiose if I looked at it that way. It's what I need to say.
So you learn as much from what you write as hopefully others who are lucky enough to come across it.
There's a line in the course where it says, you teach what you need to learn. We all know,
yes.
People say write a journal because if you write it down, it gets in there more. And I think that's true of writing a book as well. The first one you gift is yourself.
I think we always think about that in terms of fiction, but I think in nonfiction we probably don't want to apply that because we always say it's what's the word I'm looking for? You have a shift in yourself when you write a novel. You know that it's part of your, learning about you. I guess people don't think about that when it comes to writing nonfiction.
Well, I think that...
But how true, right?
I think it's totally subjective. I think a lot of people, I agree with you that a novelist is experiencing a shift in themselves, but I think a lot of people probably don't realize that. So I think a writer who writes anything is experiencing a shift in themselves as they write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah. Fascinating. As usual, your work provides a range of insights and wisdom, so let's talk about a few of those insights that are part of the new book, A Year in Miracles. Here's one. The power to work miracles is my natural inheritance. I absolutely adore that. We too often think about miracles bestowed upon us by our higher power, but are you suggesting that we have the power to work our own miracles?
Well, I think the point is that your higher power dwells within you. God is within you. So when we love, we are co-creating with God. We are aligning our thoughts with the power of God within us. It's like a missile that's, that is sent out from your mind. It's a missile of love. A missile, it's funny, they're long and straight, like a magic wand, a focused thought. Except we want to send missiles of love rather than missiles of destruction. So when you realize that you have the power to work miracles, it's because of a power in you, but not of you. It's nothing you can take personal credit for. It just happens that the power of God is within you as the power of God is within everyone.
By the same token, you talk about how we obstruct our own miracles. Quote, I embrace each moment as an opportunity for a miracle. Infinite opportunity is built into the nature of the universe. It is not lack of opportunities, but rather the ways I have deflected them that has obstructed the flow of miracles into my life. Is this another way of saying that we are our own worst enemies? And if that's
Absolutely
true, how do we correct that?
That's exactly what it's saying, that in any moment when I open my heart, I am allowing the miracle of love to emanate from me and be received by me. Any moment when I close my heart, I'm deflecting the miracle that would otherwise be there. I can walk out into the sunlight, but as soon as I put something that is a shade in front of the sun, then the sun will not get to me. The sun is there. So so I can eclipse the light, but I can't get rid of the light. So in any moment that I close my heart, I'm simply refusing to receive the miracle that would otherwise be there. You know, if I walk into a room and I'm negative, then the love I might have received from the people in that room will not be given to me because I approach them with a negative attitude.
I want to talk to you about religion, organized religion and spirituality and the term metaphysics. Are they at odds with each other these days? Maybe we should talk about the definition of religion versus spirituality. Are they different? Are they the same? An amalgamation? Why do we have so much trouble with one or the other?
Well, there's
labels.
There's exoteric religion, and then there's esoteric. The exoteric has to do with the external world and institutions and dogmas and doctrines. That's organized religion. The challenge with organized religion sometimes is that sometimes people feel that the spiritual truth within it sometimes becomes overwhelmed by the doctrine and the institutional realities. So many people are interested in the spiritual truths, but are not attracted to seeking them within a religious context. But some people do. I mean, I think that there's a spiritual awakening happening everywhere within organized religions and outside organized religions. And I think to, just dismiss and criticize all organized religion to me is as unattractive to me as dismissing the spiritual journey outside an organized context. I think that where the real revolution of thought occurs is inside the human mind. And some people are called to be part of that revolution of thought inside religious institutions, and some are feeling called to be outside religious institutions. The real evolution, though, is inside our minds.
I love that. I think that's a great line.
You are listening to The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show. The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at HallieCasser-Jayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at The Hallie CJ Show.
Quote, living your life by the teachings of love of God, that's radical in every time you said that. And I love that. But I want to know why. Why do you think that is?
Well, we were talking before about a thought system dominating this world, which is based on fear. And that fear emanates from a place of consciousness that all of us, except those who have attained enlightenment, and I do believe those people exist, we have within us what one name of which is the ego. And the ego mind is insidious. It's like in AA they talk about alcoholism is an insidious disease, a progressive disease. Addiction is interesting because even though some people are addicted to specific substances or a specific behavioral patterns, the issue of addiction is bigger than the form it takes. And the human mind at this point is addicted to thoughts of fear. We are tempted by thoughts of fear, and we need to make a conscious effort to repudiate a thought system of fear and to accept instead a thought system of love. We work harder at waging war than we work at waging peace. We work harder at destroying than we work at creating. We work harder at systems of greed than at systems of justice. And the human race is standing on a precipice. And I know that as individuals, we all come to a point of realizing that we really need to take a good look at our lives. Am I who I say I am? Do I stand on the principles I say I stand on? And am I allowing myself to transform into a better version of myself? Well, I think it's time for nations to do that too. A nation has to take a good look at itself. A nation has to ask, are we who we say we are? And where does a nation have to transform and become better, just like an individual does?
And that gets me back to what I said earlier about the fact that it seems so that we come from such a negative versus such a positive in this world. It's not just the United States, it's the whole world at this point as far as I'm concerned. And that's it. We always are coming from the negative. People like you come along, and it's a wonderful thing because you're constantly bringing to, our consciousness that you've got, it's up to you, it's inside of you. You can get to the positive. You do not have to be ruled by that negative. So if I were to say to you before we go to break, I just have to ask you this. For you, what was the catalyst? What got you to be able to have enough mind control, Marianne, that all those fears that you had in the beginning of your 20s, that you were able to overcome them?
I'm not tempted by the negative any less than anybody else is. I'm not tempted by fear any less than anyone else is. As a student of this, however, like all of us who are, I seek to discipline my mind. You know, you go to the gym to hone your muscles. You do spiritual work to hone your attitudinal muscles. Because if you don't work on your physical muscles, they become weak. And if you don't work on your attitudinal muscles, they become weak. And what does that mean? That means you're more tempted. You're more tempted to become reactive, to get angry, to be judgmental, to be blaming, to be negative. And so, you know, the word disciple and the word discipline come from the same root. You seek meditation just like you do external exercise to hone your attitudinal muscles. So, you know, I'm no perfect master. I'm not there 24/7 all the time. I mean, you know, I'm not. But I'm certainly better than I was when I was a younger person. And I'm certainly someone who makes a sincere effort. And I think that that's the impulse of this moment, people making the effort to be more positive, to be more loving, to be more compassionate, partly because we see the horrifying effects in our lives and in our collective experience as well when we don't.
Fascinating. Let's begin this segment with the power of thought. I love the fact that you believe so strongly in the power of thought, and it's something that we all can believe in. Thought can move mountains, can't they?
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't, quote unquote, believe in the law of gravity. It's just an objective, discernible law. And the issues of internal phenomena are issues of objective, discernible laws as well. And that's how cause and effect is. If I say I believe that if I drop, let go this book from my hands, it will fall on the floor, people wouldn't say, oh, it's so faithful, she believes in the law of gravity. No, I just understand the law of gravity. I know that it exists. And the same is true with cause and effect. I simply know that if I take a more positive attitude, if I live in the present rather than the past or the future, if I focus on someone's innocence rather than their guilt, if I'm kinder, if I'm more compassionate, if I'm more forgiving, if I'm more merciful, I will have one experience of the relationship and one experience of life. Different than if I live in the past or future, focus on somebody's mistakes all the time, have a negative attitude, judge, criticize, and blame all the time. I simply know that means I will have another experience of life. One will cause people to respond to me in one way. The other will cause people to respond to me in another way. It's once again, it's so interesting, isn't it? It really is common sense, but we too often ignore it.
And that is part of it, because I think one of the brilliant things that you do is that you bring enlightenment to it. You bring us awareness of it. And once you're aware, you can get that muscle exercise to say, oh, here I go. Why did I just say that or do that? I don't know
exactly
why I did that, right? And then you have to figure out within yourself, why am I so fearful today that I'm acting like a lunatic, right?
And I think it's important because it belies this notion that all of a sudden somebody got it, it's not like that. It's that we're all on the journey and we all have moments when we get it and we all have moments when we sort of fall off the spiritual wagon, and you learn to have kind of mercy for yourself and on yourself as you go through this process. So in that moment I was a bit of a jerk. Okay, get over yourself and start over. Apologize if you need to apologize. And move into the next moment in a better place.
Absolutely. You've been called a lot of things, Marianne. I love it. You've been called a guru and a visionary by many. You're a spiritual teacher. I think that I read somewhere that you've been termed a magnet. One writer described you as possessing a disarming warmth which makes you utterly approachable with a lively and irreverent sense of humor that captivates her listeners. The press has referred to you as a modern-day shaman, a Mother Teresa, Hollywood's answer to God. I love all this stuff. But what you do, it's true, has been used against you as well. The term New Ager is sometimes used in a derogatory manner. And now you're running for Congress. All the above traits and a resume of qualifications that you hope will serve you, yes. Are you some of those who won't be able to reconcile your spirituality in a country that mandates the separation of church and state with your candidacy?
Oh, well, there's a lot in what you just said. Yes, I think that New Age is a term that's used to mock and to diminish, especially on the East Coast. They call somebody New Age as though, therefore, you can't possibly be a serious thinker, which is such a joke when you look at the state of our world, and what are we supposed to think? That's a product of serious thought. So New Age is a moniker used to diminish and underestimate somebody, absolutely. But it is, what it is, and I think more and more serious people see it as simply that. In terms of the separation of church and state, the separation of church and state is one of the more enlightened aspects of our Constitution. It was put there by our founders to protect the government from interference by organized religious figures. No rabbi or priest or minister or mufti can walk into the U.S. Congress and say you are not allowed to pass that law because our religious doctrine doesn't approve. They can't come into Congress and say you will pass this law because our doctrine demands it. So that is to protect government from religious interference. At the same time, it was also to protect religion from governmental interference. If I'm giving a lecture on A Course in Miracles, the police don't get to come in and say, hey, break it up. The police don't get to come in and say, Catholicism isn't on our list of accepted religious systems. So it's to protect both of them, both government and religious institutions or religious practice, because remember, this country was founded in part in answer and repudiation of religious persecution. So that is a protective device. Now, having said that, the founders did not in any way mean to be diminishing the spiritual or even the religious conversation. They were protecting it. So the spiritual conversation just has to do with where does love come in. The spiritual journey is the journey of the heart. And so any institution, including politics, any corner of our society that does not include the conversation of the heart and questions of the heart is the less for it. And I think today's politics are a perfect example.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So why did you decide to run for Congress? Because what? What's your platform laid out for us?
I see things that are very disturbing to me, and I believe they're very disturbing to a lot of people. And I think that I grew up and would have thought my entire life when I see really insane things, I'll go, well, I don't have to worry about it. It's so clearly unconstitutional, it'll never stand. You don't see these things that way anymore. You look at things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, drones coming to your neighborhood, income inequality, the second highest child poverty rate in the world, the highest mass incarceration rate in the world, the undue influence of money on our politics. And you go, there is no reason to expect the political status quo to fix that. They created that system. So as long as money has the extraordinarily undue, disproportionate influence on our governmental functioning compared to the influence that is wielded by the average person, then we are moving in a very anti-democratic direction. We've become a government of a few of the people, by a few of the people, and for a few of the people. And this is not only unethical, it's not only undemocratic, I think it is absolutely unsustainable. And I don't think anyone can afford to be quiet about this anymore or to simply expect either major political party to magically fix it, because they're both beholden to that system. So I think we need a people's movement, and I think all of us need to ask inside our hearts, what is the way I can serve? How can I live my life as an expression of my highest response to the times in which I live? And what I got for myself after very serious and, an inquiry in my heart and with my closest friends and family, I felt I should run for office, and that's why I'm doing this.
Something that we talk about this a lot on my show. I'm so with you on the money thing because it's destroying this country. And I said that when you're running for office today, you're not just running. I think you're running against Henry Waxman, aren't you? You're running against that person, but you're also running against Mr. Citizens United.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
It is utterly bizarre.
So Citizens United, as most people realize, is a 2010 Supreme Court decision that I think will go down as one of the worst in our history. And it has allowed for unlimited and also anonymous contributions. They can come from individuals, corporations, unions, anywhere, to flood the advertising issues campaigns during election seasons. And these effectively can defeat or elect candidates for the most part, really, in the way they operate. And what this means then is that most politicians, in order to get into office and to stay in office, need the approval of these entities, mainly corporate entities. And what we have a government today is that's a system of legalized bribery. It's a system of legalized corruption. And
but how can you do that differently? You're another person who's running for office. You need money to run for office. You get in there, you're going to have the same situation as anybody else would have. How do you change it? And let me put this to you. Let me put it a different way. The political system, the political leader, I don't know if there's something wrong with our political leaders, or is the problem our political system, or is it both? I mean, Marianne, seems to me you need a Marianne Williamson-styled miracle to change this.
Well, I think the point is, if you, part of the de-democratization of the United States is that the average citizen is locked out. When one of the ways we're locked out is through locked out of political influence. One of the ways that lockout occurs is that it's so expensive to run for office. Now, in my case, where I'm not going to, obviously, huge corporate interests are not going to be supporting my campaign, I have 400,000 on Facebook, and I have 200,000 on Twitter, and I looked at that and I thought, if everybody on my Facebook and Twitter page feels moved to give $5, then I could raise the money to be competitive. Now, it remains to be seen if I can, with this grassroots campaign, raise all the money that's necessary. But I think I have a good shot at it because I think that people in the United States, many people, feel about these issues as I do. And I think a lot of people don't realize the difference that $5 can make. You know, one person's $5 donation won't get me elected. One person's $25 donation won't get elected. But if more and more people realize that doing that which is comfortable for them, even if it is only $5 or $10, that is what creates a grassroots movement. And I think...
Well, you know who knows that best? Barack Obama. He got elected on dollar...
Yeah.
So it works.
So,
it works.
You know, we can do great things together if we choose to. And I think now it's just a point of people understanding that if the changes we want are going to happen, we're going to have to make them happen. I'm running as an independent. I think a lot of people realize that the chokehold that the two major parties have on our politics is very unhealthy. It's sucking all the oxygen out of our public discourse. And I think at a certain point, it should be less about what either major political party thinks. It should be about what we think. You know, major political parties were not even mentioned in the Constitution, and George Washington warned us against them. So they have a part to play. But today, they're both so owned in so many cases by the corporate sector that even though they're good people in Washington, don't get me wrong, and they're good people in both parties, but we need a movement that comes from the people. Abolition didn't come from a major political party. Women's suffrage didn't come from a major political party. Civil rights didn't come from a major political party. These movements get picked up by parties, but they don't emerge from them. And we need a major course correction in the United States, and it's not going to come from a political party when the political status quo took us to where we are. What we need is a movement of people who are electing a different kind of candidate, which will open a space for more candidacies. Then you're going to have more independents in Congress. If we had 18, this would really change things. So that I hope my campaign, particularly if I win, this will really create a space because more people will feel inspired to say, yeah, you can run on that kind of platform as an independent, and wow, she got elected. So I hope it happens. This is not just
I love your passion, and I think you're absolutely totally right. And if anything's going to change, it is going to come from the center, and it's going to come from somebody who's not married to the political party, so to speak. On this question of political parties, I have to ask you this: Congress is a mess. You were kinder than I was in what you just said. It's a mess. It's a dysfunctional body, and it's not getting anything done. Okay, fine, we get that. But does it reflect society? Is that really what it is? That the people who are going there are reflective? That's
No, I absolutely do not believe that it does. I don't blame the American people for this. The American people are decent. The American people deserve much better. This is what has happened when moneyed interests tyrannize. What we have is an unholy alliance between our governmental powers and certain economic powers. No, it is not the people of the United States who did this. I think the people of the United States are stunned by this, and people are just kind of figuring out what to do about it. You know, Martin Luther King once said that the American people are far more compassionate than the U.S. government, and I think it's true.
I do think that's true. I share that with him, and I share that with you because I know you think that way as well. The term higher consciousness, does it have anything at all to do with the term politics?
If you look at Gandhi, you look at Lincoln, you look at some of our greatest political leaders as well as our spiritual leaders. You know, Gandhi said, anybody who thinks religion doesn't have anything to do with politics doesn't understand religion. All that politics is our collective conversation. It's our collective behavior. And if love should be central to my individual behavior, my individual life, why should it not be central to our collective life? And if anything, look at what we have now. How's it gotten us? Look at where it has gotten us. The state of the world today, where a conversation about the role of love has been absent. We have organized our society according to economic principles rather than human values. Where has this gotten us? So I think we should try another way is a very legitimate thing to say. And any human endeavor in which you leave out the issues of the heart is a dysfunctional human effort because love is central to who we are. And that does not make us less intelligent. That is the intelligence of nature. It is the intelligence of the universe. The fact that mothers want to protect their babies is the intelligence of the universe. If they didn't, the babies would die and the species would not continue. Love, by which we nurture each other and take care of each other, is so that the species continues. And what we have now is a civilization which is ordered with principles that deny we have any responsibility to take care of each other, which then leads to our fighting each other, which then leads to a situation where our willingness, our propensity, the frequency with which we fight each other with major weapons of mass destruction literally poses a threat to the survival of the human race. So we are just like any other species in evolution, which has come to a point where our behavior is maladaptive for our survival, the way we treat our planet and the way we treat each other. And so like any species, we're faced with a choice. You're going to do it differently now, or do you want to just face extinction? Because those are your two choices.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And I the reason I had that little pause was because the thought that was going through my head with that was that the movement has to be, in my opinion, and it's just mine, and I'm not Marianne Williamson. I'm just, having a girl with her own thoughts. But the movement has to come from a spiritual aspect. The shift has to be spiritual. And there's I brought it up earlier about that thing between religion and spirituality, New Age versus organized religion. Somebody wrote on Facebook, I have to read this to you because I was so astonished by it when I read it the day that you announced your candidacy. I actually wrote it down before I even knew, by the way, that you were coming on the show. Maybe it's just old cynical me, but why do I think a chic, new age, non-cult leader who peaked in the 90s is for all her good intentions and arena-packing spiel not what we need to make our ridiculously dysfunctional Congress run better? Peace and love.
My question would be whether that person has ever read one of my books. My question would be whether that person has ever heard me speak. Because my experience in my career has been that kind of criticism, there's a term in AA, contempt prior to investigation. And it has been my experience that people have read my books or heard me speak. I might not be their cup of tea. They might not want to come back or read another book. But I think it's safe to say that people who have read my books or heard me speak go, yeah, she's a decent person. She's a decent person. That was okay. Might not be what I, want to go forward with, but it was okay. That kind of hyperbolic caricaturing that you just described, I would be willing to bet that person has never actually heard me speak or read, or read my books. It's these caricatures that get created. So that caricature is not me. So the person
I understand
she's talking about there is, that has to do with her projections more than it has to do with me. And
here's where I take that. I take that to this, putting the cynicism aside and knowing, you would be up against, your detractors, your doubters. Will New Age thinking, spirituality versus organized religion, will it ever be mainstream?
First of all, I'm not even enrolled in that. I think that, first of all, this New Age term, I do not think of myself as New Age. I'm not someone who wears cut velvet scarves and,
No, I don't think you are either. I'm using it just because why I'm using that.
Yeah, but no,
to make the point.
But I think there's a point here that's more nuanced and more important than that.
Go ahead.
And that is that people who are seeking a spiritual journey, who are on a spiritual journey outside a religious context, are on the same spiritual journey as are people who do it within a religious context. There's only one spiritual journey. And so
I don't
journey
dispute
of the heart.
You. Right. That's where I'm trying to get to here.
So the journey of the heart, whether someone is led there through an institutional religious journey or a non-institutional spiritual journey, the journey of the heart, it's all about the same thing, learning to love in peace and love and forgiveness. That's the essence of every religion.
But let me take it one step further, because it's indicative of exactly what is going on in our political system today, which is we tend to compartmentalize. We tend to say it's one way or the other. You made the point, which is where I was getting, which is they're the same. But the political genre is, no, you're a Democrat, you're one thing. If you're a Republican, you're another. You see what I'm saying? We're all in it together. And it's that kind of thing that maybe a person like you getting into Congress could change this separation. There is no separation.
If I have the honor and the privilege of winning this election, I will not have a magic wand, nor should I.
Of course not.
And I would be one of 435 people. But I think that a conversation begins somewhere. And I think that there are a lot of good people in Washington who are trying to have a higher conversation, who are trying to do the right thing and are locked into the system. So I think having independent candidates, and I've been a Democrat all my life, so it's not like I don't identify, but I identify with the Democratic Party before it became so beholden. And I think that there are people within the Democratic Party, and I think within the Republican Party, who bemoan the fact that the system has become the way that it is. I'm not criticizing specific people in Congress, even the incumbent that I'm running against in this race. I don't feel like I'm running against him. I feel that I'm running against how things are done in Congress, and he happens to have simply been there for the last 38 years. And I don't think that anyone whose thinking and mode of operation is entrenched within that system is someone who can deliver us to the new conversation and the new behavioral patterns.
Can I say this? I think you're running for something as versus against something.
Exactly,
am I right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, the judgment that is going on in this country is what I find incomprehensible and disgraceful. And I guess that's why I would support somebody personally like you, who's out of that judgment. And
well,
I think maybe if we could get past the judgment that is so become the tenor of our conversation, I think that we might actually have a chance to save the nation. Question for you, change of subject. What do you think is the greatest miracle you ever conceived and created?
Well, I didn't create her, but my daughter. Certainly my most miraculous experience of my life was giving birth and raising a child, absolutely.
And if you had to do it all over again, if anything, would you do anything differently?
Have more children. That's the one regret I have, is that I didn't have more children.
Really?
It's so fantastic. Yeah, I think to myself, God, I could have had 3 of those. I could have had 4 of those.
That's a nice thought. And what miracle are you still waiting for?
The peace that I experience most of the time, I would like to have all of the time. So I'm looking forward to the day when I can practice what I preach all the time, because when I do, my life works well. I think that the miracle all of us are waiting for on a serious level is a more peaceful world, a world in which there's not so much unnecessary suffering. I don't think any of us can be truly happy, knowing that there is as much unnecessary suffering as there is.
So let's end on love, the miracle of love, the gift of love. Your thoughts as we go into a new year? Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, too. And my thought about the gift of love is that it is available to us in every moment. And our mistake is when we're looking for it, because the only way to have it is to give it. And in any moment, we can be more loving. In any moment, we can be more forgiving. In any moment, we can be more generous of heart. In any moment. And in that moment, the universe is waiting. The universe is an endless opportunity creator to stand in a place within ourselves that then causes the unfolding of opportunity and possibility for ourselves and for those around us beyond anything our rational mind can even imagine. And this coming year, 2014, there is already a blueprint, just like there's a blueprint by which the acorn becomes the oak tree and the embryo becomes a baby. There is a blueprint by which in 2014, each of us and the world itself are lifted to our highest possibilities for creativity and joy. And any moment that we stand on the ground of our own love, we are allowing the blueprint to move through us and take us to the next place in its manifestation.
My guest for the hour, miracle worker Marianne Williamson, author of the wonderful new book, A Year of Miracles, Daily Devotions and Reflections, and candidate to the U.S. House of Representatives from California's Congressional District 33. For more information on Marianne Williamson, her many books, her work, her candidacy, visit Marianne's official website at www.marianne.com. Marianne, I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure having you on the Casser-Jayne Show. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
And
thank you.
Happy New Year to you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Casser-Jayne Show, a production of RESEC LLC. The Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at HalleyCasserJayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The CJ Show. Until next time, this is Casser-Jayne.